If you take one step, then you will be a little closer to your dream than if you stay just where you are.
Welcome to Coming Home Well. I'm your guest host, Liz Booker, a retired Coast Guard helicopter pilot and writer on a mission to influence the demographics of aviation through story. As literary aviatrix, I have built a community of readers and writers around books featuring women in aviation, and have interviewed authors about their books and their writing and publishing journeys. A large portion of these stories reflect the ways in which aviation history is indelibly linked to military history. This interview is a rebroadcast of the Aviatrix Book Review podcast in collaboration with Coming Home Well. While my interviews span the diversity of aviation experiences, I hope the ones that are featured here will educate and inspire those who listen. These are human stories of grit and courage, failure and success that happen to be about women in military aviation from around the world throughout our history.
Here I am, I'm ready to go again, ready to say goodbye when the sky is high. No reason to stay on ground. Lift your hands and you can touch and fly.
Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Booker, literary aviatrix, and I'm so excited about a new book that I discovered just the other day and so excited to share it with you. It is Into the Storm, the Coast Guard Adventures of Dolph and Gwen. And I'm so happy to have the author on, Darcy Guyant. Welcome.
I am super happy to be here with you, Liz. We've only known each other through emails for a week, but we have so many common background, common stories, and common friends. I feel like we've known each other, but we just met. So
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, and you mentioned that it's only been a week. That's how excited I was about this book.
Yeah.
I sure wish we had this one when my daughter was young. So I'm glad that somebody did. Can you give us an introduction to the book and maybe do a little bit of a reading?
Sure, be happy to. So I'm gonna when I sit down with a classroom of students, and I've had the opportunity to read my book to kindergarten, first, second, third, and even some fourth graders. And what I typically do, I'll walk into the classroom with the book, and then I bring a shoebox. So I pull out the H-65, and I tell them that this is the Coast Guard HH-65 Dolphin Rescue Helicopter, and then I show them the cover of the book, and immediately I can see the kids' eyes going back and forth, and they're making the association with the book, and they immediately understand that, this is a story about a helicopter. So it just helps, especially with the younger kids, for them to make that connection real quick. So I'll go ahead and start out with where the story starts. And I wanted to write the story to be active and with a lot of movement. And it starts out with, whoop, whoop. Do you hear that siren? That is the search and rescue alarm. Somebody needs our help. Hi, I'm Dolph. I'm a Coast Guard HH-65 Dolphin Rescue Helicopter, but you can just call me Dolph. I've been patiently waiting for our next rescue mission. By the sound of the alarm, that will be right now. Here comes Gwen. She is my pilot. She runs out to join me when she hears the alarm. Gwen and I make a great team. We have flown together many times. We need each other to get our jobs done. So that's the introduction to Dolph and Gwen, and the kids. When I read it to them, they know, okay, this is the helicopter, has eyes, and it's talking and telling the story first person. So then the next couple of pages, they get to meet the rest of the crew, the rescue swimmer, his name is Sam, and Mike, who is the flight mech, and they join the crew. And then they're getting ready to take off, and Gwen gives them a briefing as to where they're going. It's a search and rescue case, and they take off to go rescue 3 men who are caught in a bad storm, and their boat is sinking. And then a little bit into the story, they're approaching the storm. It's in the distance, black clouds, lightning, waves, and Dolph says, this storm looks very serious. Gwen is flying us straight toward it. I'm beginning to feel a little nervous. Aren't we going to fly around this storm, Gwen? I asked timidly. That's what we normally do. Not this time, Dolph, Gwen says. The boat is in the middle of the storm. We have to go straight into it to reach them. The men are in danger, so we need to get there as fast as we can. And then the next page, they're getting closer to the storm, and Gwen can tell I'm feeling a little scared. She says to me, Dolph, I'm a little scared too, but now's the time to show courage and trust each other. Keep your engines running strong, and we will all be fine. Gwen's words make me feel better. I do trust her. She is a very good pilot. We will all work together as a team, and each of us will do our part to save the men on the boat. So that's the first part of the story, and from there they go on to complete the hoist, and Sam gets deployed into the water and rescues the men in the basket, and then in the middle of the hoist they have an emergency. So Gwen has to take charge, show leadership, keep everybody calm, and they accomplish the hoist, finish up the hoist, and then they go land, and it ends with everybody's happy. So.
It's a great story, and it's so reflective of so much of the work that we did. I love it so much. Did I read that this was based on a specific case that you used to talk about?
Right. It's based on a specific rescue that I did when I was stationed at ATC Mobile. In fact, as a H-65 instructor, we got sent out on a rescue case over near Appalachian. And this is essentially what happened. It was in the middle of a tropical storm, and we started to run out of fuel, and it was pretty tense, but we did it. Myself and the entire crew, we earned commendation medals for that one. So it was a good mission.
Well done. Congratulations. So it sounded like you got some encouragement. I've been watching so you're on Instagram. That's how I found you. I'm helping the Coast Guard Aviation Association manage their social media. And so I get on their Instagram and I saw that you were following us. And so I went and checked out your profile, which was relatively new. So this book came out when? In May?
It was published the middle of May.
Okay. Yeah. And so you're talking us through the story on there, which I think is really adorable. You've got pictures of you with your granddaughter. And you also mentioned that you got some encouragement to write this book. Tell us about that. Okay.
So my first book was a memoir. And to back up even a little bit more from that, in 2018, I was asked to be a guest speaker at a Veterans Day assembly for a local high school. And the theme of the Veterans Day assembly that year was legacy, family military legacies. And I said, yeah, I can talk about that easily. I'm a seventh generation descendant of a Revolutionary War veteran who was actually at Yorktown. And my immediate family, my dad, my brother, daughter, and son, between the five of us, we've all served in all five branches of the military. So we got all that covered. As I was thinking about the legacy part of it, and my great grandfather, we only have one document, and that was his application for veterans benefits that he filled out in 1833. And it told us a little bit about his military service. That's how we know about it. But we don't really know anything else about him. And I've always wondered, gosh, wouldn't it have been nice if he had actually wrote something down for his descendants? Why did he immigrate? And he came from England before the war. And what did he do before the war and after the war and all this? A lot of questions, but we don't know. So I was thinking, I'm going to leave something for my granddaughter. So I wrote the memoir. I put in there 12 chapters, 12 stories of significance to me that had a significant impact on my life and the trajectory and the course of my life. And I wrote it with my granddaughter in mind and future descendants that may want to know who was their great grandfather in the future. That's cool. I volunteer at a elementary school. I work with first grade teachers and first graders, and the teachers read my book, my memoir, and they said, you should write a children's book. And at first I'm like, nah, I don't know anything about that. So I thought about it, and they kept pushing me. And I finally said, okay. So I sat down and I wrote this, the Into the Storm. And I thought about as I'm getting ready to write this, well, how do I make a children's story out of the SAR case that I did? And then I came up with the idea, well, and I'll tell it from the perspective of the helicopter, and I'll call him Dolph for dolphin. And I've had my granddaughter in mind as I was writing this, so I'll make the pilot a woman, and just with thinking about my granddaughter, and then it went from there, just writing the story and taking a whole chapter and streamlining it down to less than 1,000 words, which is really hard to do when you're writing a children's book. And one of the teachers, and I got to give a shout out to my teachers, Erin, Michelle, Mara, and Lorena. Hi,
and thank you for encouraging him.
I'm on YouTube. So anyway, they encouraged me along the way, and they gave me a lot of really good feedback. At first, it was like, "Oh, yeah, this is too long." And one of the bits of advice was, remember, you're going to have illustrations. Unlike in my memoir, there's a few pictures, but no illustrations. So you don't have to be as descriptive. And that really helped me to trim it down, and you let the illustrations help to tell the story. So, and when I found an illustrator, knowing that I had my granddaughter in mind when I wrote this story. My granddaughter is only 3.5. So I don't know what she's going to look like when she gets to be in 20 years from now, but she'll probably look a lot like her mom. So I gave the illustrator a picture of my daughter and my granddaughter and said, hey, can you make Gwen kind of look like them? And the first time I showed the book to my granddaughter and the picture of Gwen, I asked her, who does this look like? And she said, Mama. So I said, yes, perfect. Nice job. So that's how that all came about. So.
It's what a great story. So first of all, thank you very much for this book. Of course, I'm thrilled to have it, and I will be out there. I do outreach events youth events where I bring stacks of books and just show the kids how many books there are and how there are many more books than just about Amelia Earhart. So this will be at the top of my stack every time that I go visit. But also, writing a children's book, a picture book, is no joke. I have a Master of Fine Arts in Writing for children and young adults. And people who think writing a picture book is the easiest thing, it's exactly the opposite. And that was one of the things that I was really pleasantly surprised about with this book, is that you did a really good job for somebody, especially for somebody who doesn't have a degree or hasn't studied that or whatever. So I think those elementary school teachers really helped you out there. They know what they're looking for.
Exactly. And I've been helping in first grade classrooms for 7 or 8 years and helping them to learn to read and reading children's books. And then when I decided, okay, I'm going to write a children's book, I started looking much more carefully at the children's books to see how they did it and what captures the kids' attention. So it was kind of a learn as I go, self-taught kind of thing. But
yeah, it's great because all the characters in this, I just love the anthropomorphic helicopter so much. Right. And the fact that he has a female pilot and that they talk to each other, it's so great. It's so perfectly appropriate for children. Everybody has agency in the book, which is that's what you want to give children, the knowledge that they can make choices and decisions that impact the world positively. And so you've done all of that in this tiny little children's picture book. And I just love it. And also just the awareness that you're going to raise to the Coast Guard and its missions and the opportunities that are available to young people if they find that kind of work appealing. So I love it. Yeah. Congrats.
And when I wrote the book, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just for entertainment. I wanted there to be lessons that could be talked about. So courage is a big part of it, is a big theme of the story, teamwork, trust. And that's what I love reading this to the kids and then having a discussion about it afterwards, talking about what is courage. And where do we get courage from? And then are we ever afraid? And of course, everybody raises their hand. And so there's a lot of things to talk about, life lessons and things, especially when they're young kids. Everybody gets afraid, and you got to show courage. And, so that's my favorite part about this book is just it gave me a foot in the door to spend more time reading to them and helping them to teaching them. So.
That's so great. That's so great.
I did make a mistake. I think it was the second classroom I read the book to. It was a group of first graders, and I was reading the story, and I got to the pages that I shared to you about where Dolph is concerned. He's starting to get afraid, and I stopped at that point and I asked him and I started my discussion on courage. I asked him, what is courage? And have you ever been afraid? And of course, every hand went up. So I called on a few students to tell me, well, what have you been afraid of? Or what are you afraid of? And they would tell me things. And at this point, the teacher had left the room. I was there by myself as we're doing this. And then one of the kids said he was afraid of spiders. And I chimed up and I said, oh, yeah, I was afraid of spiders when I was your age, too. And I'm still afraid of spiders somewhat. And that just opened up the door. Everybody's hand went up and everybody had a story to tell about spiders. And I kind of lost control of the class. And it was at that point that the teacher walked in and heard all this discussion about spiders. And she goes, there's not a spider in the story. Why are you guys focused on spiders? And I said, yeah, that's my bad. So I learned a lesson from that
just thinking back into our Coast Guard careers, it's hard enough to control a room of officers, much less the room of kindergartners or first graders. So I can see that getting out of control. It's cute. Yeah. Well, I want to know, I know a little bit about it, but let's hear it from you. How did you find your way to Coast Guard aviation?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I love hearing people's origin stories, how they got interested in aviation.
Yeah, me too.
And my interest in aviation came in September of my senior year of high school, the beginning of my senior year of high school, and I was watching a football game on TV, and a commercial came on. And the commercial started with a beautiful glassy lake surrounded by trees, mountains, a wilderness lake, mountains in the background, and a float plane comes swooping in over the top of the trees, and it lands and glides to a stop on this beautiful lake, and they pull up to the beach, and they jump out, and they're fishing, and they set up their tent, their campsite, and they have a fire, and then the last scene of the commercial is it pulls back and these guys are sitting around the fire and the float plane is right behind them on this beautiful lake and they're all drinking a beer. It was a beer commercial. It was Miller Time beer. So I'm watching that and I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated high school. I had no idea. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, I want to do that. I want to be an Alaskan bush pilot and fly people in and go fishing and camping for a living. That was the ultimate for me. So I asked my dad, how do I learn how to fly? And he's like, I don't know, just go down to the airport and start taking lessons. So I did. Got my private pilot license in high school, as a senior in high school, and then started looking around at how to go from there. It's expensive to learn to fly, even back in 1980. Long story short, ended up in the Army. They trained me to fly helicopters. I went in on the Army's High School of Flight School program, went in at 18, graduated from Army flight training at 19, did 7 years in the Army, and then I heard about the Coast Guard's Direct Commission Aviator program. And while I was in the Army, I got my bachelor's degree from Embry-Riddle. And so I qualified, applied, and was picked up to go into the Coast Guard. And I really liked learning more about the Coast Guard at that time, their mission of search and rescue. I wanted to use my skills, and by this time I almost had 3,000 hours of rotary wing time, all in a Huey, UH-1, but I wanted to use my skills to do search and rescue, and it happened. So I went in, got in DCA.
I was a detailer for a little bit in my career, and I had the privilege of being able to be a part of the selections for our Direct Commission Aviators. And at the time, this is about 10 years ago, about a third of our pilots, the Coast Guard's pilots, came from other services, and most of the Army. Yeah. I flew with lots of prior Army pilots. And of course, you guys just came out of the gates knowing so much more than we did coming out of flight school as nuggets. And so you did really, really well, especially in the first few years that you were flying for the Coast Guard. So I can see why you went straight to Mobile for your second tour to be an instructor. That's great. Yeah. And I'm sorry I missed you. I'm sorry I didn't get to fly with you. We were about 5 years apart on a couple of tours, but we have a lot of mutual friends, especially from Port Angeles. So that's really cool.
When I got your message via Instagram last Monday, I was new to Instagram and I got your message and I'm like, is this legitimate or is this some kind of scam? Because people do that nowadays. They'll think they know a little bit about you and try to lure you in. So before I responded to you, I did a little bit of research, I Googled you, and I ended up talking to Claudia McKnight, which you know, and I figured the two of you had, yeah. And she said, yeah, she's legit. So that's when I got back in touch with you. Like, okay, yeah, let's go. But yeah, we've got a lot of mutual friends, connections there. So
yeah, really great. Well, so I want to know, are Dolph and Gwen going to have more adventures?
That I'd love to be able to continue the adventures of Dolph and Gwen. But here's the thing is I self-published this book. I self-published the memoir, which made sense because a traditional publisher's not going to, I'm not famous. And I just wanted to get it out there for my friends and family and my granddaughter. Yeah. So I went that route first. And it was easy, pretty easy to do, self-publishing. That one didn't cost too much. But then I decided I'm going to go ahead and self-publish my children's book, mostly because I was in a hurry to get it out there. I didn't want to wait years and years and still maybe never make it. So I made that choice. And because of the illustrations, it costs a lot more because I'm not an artist. I had to hire an illustrator. And so I invested quite a bit into doing this book, but it's been worth every penny. The return that I'm getting and satisfaction from seeing the kids and my granddaughter, she's 3.5. This is her favorite book. She's got it memorized, word for word, 100% memorized. And one day I took her to see her great grandparents. I'm her grandpa, and my parents live nearby. And she took the book, or they had a book, my grandparents did, my parents, her great-great-grandparents, and she sat down and read the book to her great-grandparents. Now, she can't read the words, but she's got it memorized. And she read the book, and that was priceless. That was worth, you can't put a price on that. To see my 3.5-year-old reading to her great grandparents in the 80s. So is there going to be another one? I would love to, but I can't afford to keep doing self-publishing on these. I might maybe next time around see if I can find a publisher, especially if this book does well. If this one does well and I've got backing from people like you and things like this, I can send to an agent or a publisher and say, hey, this could be worth your time. So we'll see from there. But
yeah. So first of all, everybody go buy the book so that we can help support Darcy to give us more adventures, especially all the coasties out there. What about exchanges? Are we getting the book in the Coast Guard exchanges?
Not yet. I have looked at their website and I see that there are some children's books in the Coast Guard Exchange. I haven't approached them yet. It's on my list of things to do, people to talk to about it, but I'd love to. But I've heard it's difficult. The exchange is pretty picky, from what I understand. So.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what could be more appropriate for a Coast Guard exchange. So hopefully we can make it through that process.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, right now my focus is on trying to build some more awareness of the book. Okay. And you have been a godsend for that. Thank you very much. Using Instagram, learning Instagram and how to do all that. And so I'm in a bookstore downtown in Olympia here. They finally put my book in there. And then I've got a Meet the Author event scheduled coming up here on Coast Guard Day. Combining it with Coast Guard Day on August 5th. Actually, it's the day after Coast Guard Day, but close enough because it's a Saturday and
perfect
more people. But so I'm doing that, and that'll be my first for that. So I'm focusing on that, and eventually I'm going to try to get it in more libraries. And the exchange, of course, would be wonderful. And I've got so many ideas in my head about the continuing adventures of Coast Guard Search and Rescue. There's an endless supply of stories that could be told. And of course, I've got several from my own experience, but just other things that are out there. And then my mind goes off on other types of children's books. And I went down this road that I never expected I'd be on. and it's opened up the floodgates of ideas. And so we'll
so
see
great.
where it goes.
Well, you know what was really cool? We didn't have your book, but we had The Adventures of Onyx, which was one of the station mascots, one of the dogs.
Right, the dog.
And she
that.
passed away a couple years ago, which was really sad. But I had the whole collection of those books. And so this is a nice compliment to have the aviation perspective. And I can totally see this going in the same direction as those books.
Well, that series with Onyx, they do have that in the exchange, or at least online, available online. So they do have some, but mine's different.
Well, this is so great. Darcy, this is so great. Congratulations. Thank you so much for putting your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something so perfect, perfectly representative of our mission in the Coast Guard. And yeah, I see lots of possibilities for Dolph and Gwen in the future, and I hope we can make that happen for you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And at the conclusion of my book, it ends up with teaching the kids the Coast Guard motto is Semper Paratus. And then I also teach them another Latin term of, I'm going to get it wrong, it's a Latin term, my mind just went blank, for be courageous, because that's what the story is about. Esto Barustus is Latin for be courageous. So I throw that in there as be courageous, and that's what I tell the kids to do. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for listening. You can find Into the Storm and over 600 other books featuring women in aviation in all genres for all ages at the beautiful new Literary Aviatrix website. I want to thank Shasta Ways and Michael Wilds for their hard work to help this vision become a reality. I love the new website. I hope you will too. Blue skies and happy reading. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Coming Home Well, for your collaboration in helping these stories reach a broader audience. Writing is a deeply healing and cathartic exercise. It can help you process your experiences, whether you intend to share them with the world or keep them to yourself. Living the experiences of others through reading can also help heal, validate, and create a sense of connectedness. If you're interested in hearing about how these authors brought their stories to life on the page, check out the Writer's Room interviews on the Aviatrix Book Review website and podcast. If you'd like to join the book club conversations, look for the Aviatrix Book Club on Facebook. All are welcome. And connect with me on social media at Literary Aviatrix. I'd love to hear from you. Blue skies and happy reading.